everyone. I know, it's been an extremely long time since we last had our lecture. I got caught up in a lot of things, but let's continue from where we left off. So, today we are going to talk about how postcolonial literature and feminism converge in literature. Two critical frameworks that explore identity, power dynamics, and the abuse of power and privilege. We are also going to examine how literature, specifically by women of color, has become a site where these two frameworks converge. So let's begin with a recap of postcolonial studies. At its core, postcolonial studies examines the legacies of colonialism, domination, cultural erasure, and the imposition of Western norms on our cultural societies or our colonized societies. Think of theorists like Edward Said, who gave the concept of Orientalism, in which he talks about how the West has always treated East as an exotic place or a feminine place in the most metaphorical sense, or how Homi K. Bhabha talks about the cultural identity or the hybrid identity of the self who moves away from their own place of birth and then tries to be accepted in the West, and how the self loses and how one loses their own selves in that conversion. Now, feminism interrogates the social, political, and economic inequalities faced by women. Most importantly, feminism is not monolithic. It has evolved in four waves. The first wave of feminism came sometime between the late 19th century and the early 20th century. Here, women focused on their legal rights, especially suffrage. Think of texts like Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Women, advocating for women's right to vote. The second wave of feminism came somewhere in the 1960s to 1980s. It focused on social and cultural inequalities, workplace rights, and reproductive rights. In 1963, Betty Friedan came out with her text, The Feminine Mystique, which allowed or which inspired a lot of women to go out on the streets and ask for workplace right and ask for equal rights and demand for a safer space to work. Now, what happened during this time period was that, yes, this book influenced a lot of women to fight for their own rights, but it focused, this kind of feminism, this second wave of feminism, focused specifically on white women and their rights. It focused on an average middle class white woman who was also a homemaker. Later on, different theorists like Alice Walker opposed this idea of feminism. They started talking about how this kind of feminism was not actually inclusive. This was talking or catering specifically to the white woman, and they were never talking about women of color. Which is why in the third wave of feminism, which came somewhere between the 1990s to the early 2000s, it emerged as a critique of the second wave of feminism, where the theorists finally called out the tendency to prioritize white middle class women in feminism. The emphasis started going on intersectionality, identity, and diversity. The most influential voice of this time was, in a way, Alice Walker, who finally demanded for womanism and not feminism, who stated that this feminism caters only to white women and we need to create an inclusive enough space which includes lesbian women, black women, brown women, women from all walks of the society. Simone de Beauvoir, in her The Second Sex, can also be seen talking about similar ideologies. In the preface of The Second Sex, she talks about how patriarchy has managed to divide women on the basis of class, caste, culture, and color. Because of the fact that women of different color have always thought about themselves as being from a different culture, being from a different world, they have never actually thought of coming together to fight against patriarchy, which is also one of the things that should be. Simone de Beauvoir argued that this is one of the things that should be catered to in feminism, and that feminists should fight about this as well, that they should create an inclusive space. Now, currently, we are living in the fourth wave of feminism. It started somewhere around the 2010s and it is going on currently. Now, this is driven by social media and global feminist activism. It focuses on harassment, body positivity, queer issues, and continued attention to marginalized communities, especially women of color. Now, the convergence of post-colonial studies and feminism can be called post-colonial feminism. This framework critiques both colonial domination and patriarchal oppression, showing how women in formerly colonized societies faced dual oppressions, one imposed externally by colonizers and another internally by the patriarchal issues that functioned in their societies. The key thinkers in this area of study are, of course, Chandra Talpade Mohanty, who, in the Under Western Eyes, critiques the homogenization of the third world women created by Western feminism. And obviously, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, who in her seminal text Can the Subaltern Speak, argues that women from colonized societies are often silenced, caught between imperial and patriarchal discourses. The focus here is on power dynamics, representation, and voice. And post-colonial feminism asks whose story is being told and who actually is speaking this story or telling this story. Now, I know that there has been a recent discourse on this idea of feminism as well. A lot of people have come out and argued against Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, saying that it is because of women like Gayatri Spivak who are constantly speaking on behalf of marginalized women that marginalized women are actually not getting any space to talk, because their space is being taken by these upper class women or by these privileged women who are constantly saying that I will speak on her behalf. There was this text that I read when I was in my master's. It was written by a woman named Cornelia Sorabji, who makes a case for women who choose to put on a veil. And she talks about the philosophical concerns, the philosophical ideologies, that how feminists decide that, okay, I am going to take it upon myself to remove the veil from that woman's face. But what if the woman wants that veil? What if the woman is more comfortable in that veil? How are you taking away that choice from her and then calling it feminism? Is it also not a kind of harassment? Did you ever ask the woman if she wants liberation? So, of course, all of this, the entire idea of post-colonial feminism comes with a lot of issues, a lot of concerns and discourses of its own. Now, let's talk about some of the most recurring themes in post-colonial feminism. The first one, obviously, is voice and silencing. We are constantly, as post-colonial feminist critics, we are constantly asking whose story is being told, who is telling this story, and of course, this discourse comes from Spivak's essay. Then the second theme is hybrid identities. Here, characters negotiate multiple cultural identity, as in Bapsi Sidhwa's Ice Candy Man or Bharti Mukherjee's Jasmine. Both of these stories talk about women who are constantly battling between different cultural identities and trying to understand where they actually belong. The third one is gendered violence. Colonial and patriarchal systems often enforce violence against women. As seen in Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, we see that how that book is trying to fight against colonialism, but also Achebe constantly mentions how this society is also extremely patriarchal and how the men of the society treat the women of that society. The fourth theme is migration and diaspora. Post-colonial feminism often deals with displacement, as is seen in Zadie Smith or Jhumpa Lahiri's work, where they show us women who have moved from one place to another, exactly as what happens in Bharti Mukherjee's Jasmine as well, where we see a woman who has left everything behind for some reason or the other. Majorly, most of the times, it is marriage, just as it happens in Jhumpa Lahiri's The Namesake, where a woman is leaving her world, her nation behind, and is going to settle into a different nation, majorly because of her husband, and how she's not able to deal with that new identity that comes with this new nation. And the last recurring theme is resistance and agency. Even within oppressive systems, women find ways to assert agency, sometimes subtly and sometimes radically. We have seen a lot of books, a lot of texts where even though women are constantly being marginalized, they are constantly being thrown to the periphery of the society, they somehow find ways to come together to fight this patriarchy and the colonization. To sum up, post-colonial studies and feminism come together in the most powerful ways possible, especially if you see literature written by women of color. You would always see, if you read any book written by Toni Morrison or Audre Lorde, you would see how beautifully they talk about post-colonial identities as well as feminist identities, and how they talk about the impact that colonization had on feminism, and how the abuse of patriarchy and how the abuse of colonization sometimes it comes together, and the woman has to be the site where all of this violence is taking place. There are a lot of feminist writers out there, writers like Arundhati Roy, writers like Zadie Smith, Kamala Shamsi, writers like Bharti Mukherjee, Toni Morrison. All of them are constantly writing about the female identity within a colonial power or within a post-colonial state, and how Arundhati Roy in most of her works also writes about how even in post-colonial nations women are not free, at least marginalized women are not free from the abuse that the colonies used to impose, because the state in power still finds ways to exercise the same form of abuse in some way or the other. Okay, so today we are going to stop here. I have given you a lot of text that you can look at, that you can try to understand. In the next few lectures, we'll try to look at other cultural theories and literary theories, and I promise it's going to be extremely amazing. It is going to be wonderful. So stay with me. Bye bye.